Dear Harstem, I understand that Terran have very good tools for harassing, but enough is enough. This clown played Proxy Reaper, to which I defended not too brilliant, but I was still miles ahead. Since he had no tech or second base, and yet it didn't matter. Banshee is the most stupid unit in this game. I hate mutas, but mutas deal way fewer damage and have no cloak. Banshee, with its stupid upgrade, is like Muta in combination with DT. Super fast, stalkers have no chance with catching up, deal not as little as mutas, so they can fight part of your army, cloak, so you need observer speed or oracle, because cannons die in half a second to fair amount of Banshee. It's flying, so he can be in 3 places within 5 seconds, so I can't fight his army if I can't catch up to it. I can't attack his bases, because of course Terran Turtle is fantastic to play against. The only thing that I could think of going is Phoenixes, but at this point he killed few of my Nexuses and my core structures. Maybe if I'd figure it out sooner, I'd be fine. But I didn't think. It's so unfair, and I don't think he deserved this. Name: Admin, Race: Protoss, League Master, and MMR 4.5k MMR on the European server. And the question is, are Banshees imbalanced, or does Admin suck? Alright, here we go. Our Masters player, Admin, struggling with the Cloak Banshees, but not just regular Cloak Banshees, they are Speed Banshees. Now, the Speed Banshee is one of those units that is actually quite tricky to deal with, because like he mentions, Stalkers can't quite catch up with it. You have to often play base defense for a long time. Very often in the early game, you also play a build order, which isn't optimal against Mass Banshee, because usually you expect, well, some type of bio play. So, a lot of the time Protoss players get caught off guard, then they need to make some type of response and they need to adapt in the moment. And that can be very difficult to do if you don't already have kind of a plan previously thought out in your head. He also mentioned the Proxy Rex, and honestly, I'm not going to blame him for taking damage against the Proxy Rex. Proxy Rex is really difficult to play against. You need a very tight response often, and it feels so hard to not take any damage. Good control, by the way, out of this Terran here. Just microing this Reaper properly. It is so nice to see some higher level replays where both players are controlling their units with, well, in a somewhat adequate way. Bunker isn't going to finish unless there's no extra SCV coming across the map. I guess that this is going to get stopped the moment the first Adept or Stalker pops out. There's going to be an Adept. Now, second Assimilator is rather delayed for no real reason. We see there's plenty of money in the bank around right now. In this type of scenario, I also wouldn't completely mind having a battery in the main or the natural, so at least one of your bases is free against the threat of 2 jumping in Reapers, or even 3 jumping in Reapers. That way you can focus all of your defenses in one base. Right now, if these 2 Reapers would end up going into the main base right now, there would be nothing there to defend, and you'd probably end up losing 3-4 extra workers and put yourself in a, well, quite frankly, terrible spot. The only reason why the Protoss player is not in that bad of a spot after losing 3 workers is because the Terran played a very inefficient build order, focusing mainly on gas mining. A lot of gas mining is not actually that helpful for Terran. It delays their command center a lot, while barely increasing the timing of that initial starport. And in this case, the Terran kind of forgets its starport as well, is getting supply blocked. So I honestly completely agree with what Admin said initially. He said, my defense against the proxy barracks wasn't good, but it didn't really matter because I was still ahead. And this is a very fair characterization of the game so far. He has a faster nexus and his opponent has a command center. The command center is on the high ground. There's no follow-up threat yet. I mean, what's it going to be? A Banshee walking across the map? Or sorry, a mine walking across the map? No, it can't be. So yeah, I actually really like this position for the Protoss. The only problem I have is with how bad the Protoss is at spending his money. He's floating 600 minerals, 125 gas right now. A third base could be on the way already. We could be getting extra gases in the natural if you're not sure yet if you want to take a third base. I can completely understand that as well, by the way. If you don't see a command center landing on your opponent's natural, like he saw it now with his Adept, it was flying so it doesn't show up here in the in the Fog of War, but basically he knows there's an expansion. But if you don't know it, I can understand why you don't want to take a third base. You don't want to be on 3 bases while your opponent is on one base all-inning you. That makes a lot of sense. Ideally what you want right now is your main priority should be gathering a little bit of information, keeping a unit on your opponent's side of the map perhaps, trying to figure out what is going on, because quite frankly Admin is a little bit blind. He is going for a standard-ish setup with blink, couple of gateways, robotics facility, so it's going to be safe against most things. But if you're not entirely sure what's happening, I really wouldn't mind just getting a quick battery over here, maybe even a battery in the main base. Keeping one unit on your opponent's side of the map, and it allows to see if your opponent is moving out. You can see it with that unit that is over here on the map, so you can respond with perhaps more batteries if necessary. If you don't see a move out, you can perhaps be a little bit greedier. And with the battery in the main base, you're a bit safer if it's going to be just an initial one Banshee, or if it's like a Marine drop, or even something like a Hellion drop. So we see Admin doesn't even have very good vision on the right side of his main base. Luckily for Admin, it is none of that, and our Terran player is playing an extremely unorthodox build order. This is double starport, cloak Banshee, with a single tank. Now, if this had been spotted, I'm pretty sure that Admin just could have walked across the map at any point with like 10 stalkers and won the game. But because it hasn't been spotted, he can't really do that. Well, he could still be doing it blind, but that would be risky in case it isn't a build order like this. I like that this observer is going across the map. And you know what? I even like that this observer didn't go across the map immediately. You could say, well, Kevin, that is stupid. You want to scout as fast as possible. Yes, but you also want to keep detection at home for as long as possible. You're playing against a Terran that stayed on one base for very long and thus probably has some type of tech coming in. Keeping an observer at home in case of armory Widowmine drops, which means that the Widowmines become invisible, or in case of double cloak Banshee, having that observer there is absolutely not a luxury, but it is a must. It is a necessity. And I kind of like that Admin decided to keep this one at home for a little bit longer. Now, that could just be because he's slow at sending it out. But if that was a decision, that was a very responsible and mature decision, I would say. Very, very responsible and mature. Something that's less responsible and mature is the fact that we're banking up infinite amounts of Chrono Boost. We're getting a Robo Bay right now. And Blink finishing up. Not a huge fan of a blind Robo Bay. Very often it doesn't have much of a purpose this late. Like, basically what I'm trying to say is you're either going to get it earlier than this to blindly get into Colossi, or if you're already getting it this late, just wait until your observer scouts what your opponent is doing, and then you can pretty much decide, hey, do I want charge Templar Archives at 6 gateways, go for like a big charge Archon composition, or do I want to go into those Colossi, or perhaps even start with Disruptors in some very niche scenarios. Which I can't really think of right now where you'd want to start with one Disruptor. The Observer is going to fly into a turret here, which is... Oh! 2 turrets. Now I could make fun of you here for losing the Observer, but I'm not going to do that, because the situation you find yourself in is truly unique. Your opponent decided to not just build 1 turret, which is extremely uncommon at this timing in this matchup, but 2 turrets at the same time. Your reaction speed to that first turret was even very good. You pulled your observer away immediately, and it only died because for whatever godforsaken reason, there was a second turret there, which makes no sense. This doesn't reflect poorly upon you, it reflects poorly upon your opponent. This be a little bit as if you were walking on the sidewalk and out of nowhere a clown on a unicycle throws a water balloon at you. You catch the water balloon, throw it back, hit him square in the face, he falls off his unicycle, and as you watch that happen, you get hit by a water balloon in the back of your head by a second clown on a unicycle. I mean, can I really blame you for getting hit by that second water balloon? No, I would just merely be impressed by you catching that first one. And that is the same here with this observer. So yeah, basically, I'm just impressed by you. Keep throwing those water balloons, my friend. However, you are lacking some information right now, and as a result, well... Okay, a little bit of theory. I don't expect you to completely understand this or know this, but let's just look at what you actually scouted. Despite not getting any major information, we still can gather some clues, right? Your opponent is building turrets. Now, what are turrets? Turrets are buildings that cost only minerals. What units cost minerals? Bio units are very mineral focused. That means if you see a lot of turrets, and you see 3 turrets over here, see a bit of a depot wall, you can almost always call that is going to be mech in this type of case, or at least with a bunch of tanks there. Now, you don't know if there's going to be starport units with it, but you can kind of call them mech. And in that case, You could consider cancelling your robotics bay, throwing down a Templar Archives and starting charge, or you could let your robotics bay finish, but just not get any units from your robotics facility right now, and then adding a couple of extra gateways, going into charge, still throwing down the Templar Archives, and kind of continue that route. So even if you don't get the full information with the little information that you have been offered, you could still make somewhat of an educated guess. Now, once again, it is difficult to make an educated guess like that if you're not a top player. Like maybe you just don't completely understand. That's completely fine. I'm not gonna blame you for that. Templar Archives, Second Forge. I think these are decent calls. Disruptor, I'm not a huge fan of. It's not going to be very useful against high tank counts usually. So, but once again, I understand. It's still better than starting a Colossi and Thermal Lens. So I'm okay with that. I'm really okay with that. Now, this is an uncommon move, so I don't expect you to have a good response against this, okay? There's 2 Banshees coming in towards your natural, and then these 2 Banshees are either heading towards your third base or heading towards your main base, depending on what the Terran wants. 4 Banshee attack squad, 7 minutes and 31 seconds into the game. I honestly haven't seen this in like 5 years. So having a mediocre response or being surprised, that's okay. You have a blind cannon already here. You pulled workers away. That is good. You are taking a little bit of damage here in your main base. But once again, I wouldn't have expected the first 2 Banshees. I also wouldn't have expected Banshee 3 and 4 for sure. Now, this is a little bit more painful because now you did see that there were Banshees in your main and you're just not responding whatsoever. Yeah. This started kind of fine. This actually started kind of fine. You know? For the first 2 Banshees, you could almost say, like, that was... Imagine you're walking on the sidewalk. I'm just picking out a random comparison here, okay? Imagine you're walking on the sidewalk, and all of a sudden a clown shows up on a unicycle. And this clown, out of nowhere, starts throwing water balloons at you. Those were the first 2 Banshees over here. And you catch these water balloons and throw it back at the clown. You hit him square in the face. Fantastic move. Now... if you then get hit in the back of the head by a water balloon, by a second clown on a unicycle, am I gonna blame you for that? No, of course not. Who could have expected 1 clown, let alone 2 clowns on a unicycle throwing water balloons? I'm not gonna blame you for that. However, if then the second clown gets off the unicycle and pees on your leg and you don't respond to that, yes, your legs deserve to be wet. And that is what happened here. You now have wet legs, you lost way more workers than you ever should have, and there's no real reason for that. Your initial response to these was good. Your initial response to the ones in the main wasn't as great, but then once he flies towards your third base, you knew you had no cannon here. The only base that was in danger of actually being without detection was your third base. That should have been the first priority once you saw the Banshees head towards the main base, or once you saw the Banshee in the main base, is getting detection to the final base that doesn't have it yet. Now, we are in a situation where you have a very big anti-air army, which is good because you're playing against Banshees. You kind of want to get the confirmation that this is indeed multiple starports. You're not getting that. Personally, I'm not a huge fan of that. A disruptor here. Okay. Now, the first disruptor I understood. Okay? The first disruptor I understood. You didn't know what type of position you were in. You had absolutely no clue what type of position you were in. But now you do know what type of position you're in. You're in a position where your opponent is building a lot of Banshees. And I can't flame you for not being great at adapting within a game. It is a difficult game and it's difficult to think and play at the same time. Maybe you do not know the perfect response here. I played amateur football, for example, for a little over 16 years. And sometimes people would pass the ball to me and I just didn't know what to do with it. You feel panicked, you shoot it over the sidelines. It's not the end of the world, but it's annoying. This is a similar situation for you, except rather than shooting the ball over the sidelines, you're pooping yourself by building a disruptor. A disruptor is a highly specialized unit that has a purpose against groups of units that are very small, so many can fit in your purification nova and you can explode them. If you just confirmed that there's no such unit, no very small units, why are you getting a second disruptor? It doesn't make a lot of sense. There's basically no unit that would be worse right now than the disruptor. Except maybe the Colossi could be worse, or if you add like 4 sentries. But the Disruptor is a very bad call at this point, and I'm not a fan of it. We continue. Banshees moving in towards your main base. Now you have 0 map vision once again around the map. This has been an issue the entire game already for you from start to finish. I mentioned have a unit over here to see your opponent move out. But now that you know that Banshees are around, you might want to start building some pylons around the map so you can get some early spotters on. Now, your Disruptor gets sniped here. Your opponent actually doing you a favor. Like he shows you how bad the Disruptor is against Mass Banshee. And as a result, you hopefully will not build any extra. This is a good call. Observer speed. I really like that call. Now, whenever you do see high Banshee numbers, you always kind of have to think, what is the real weakness of the Banshee? And if you think a little bit about it, it is the inability of the Banshee to shoot up. It has a range attack, but it can't shoot straight. It can only shoot down, which means that units like Phoenixes, Void Rays, Carriers, Tempest, Motherships are all fantastic against it because you can chase them, and specifically the Phoenix is great because the Phoenix is faster than the Banshee, and with Observer Speed, you can catch the Banshees always. That means that your opponent's entire infrastructure would be made useless by legit getting out 3 to 4 Banshees. That is literally all that or Banshees, 3 to 4 Phoenixes. That is all it would take. You could just stay at home with Stalkers and go hunting for Banshees with your Phoenixes. Until you max out, then you attack with your main army, move across the map, and hopefully win the game. Now, you haven't quite figured it out yet, and that is okay. Instead, you're going across the map, despite knowing that there's Banshees in your main base, destroying absolutely everything. So you kill one base, and your opponent, well, takes out every single pylon in your main base. It's an interesting engagement as well. Holy crap. That was a bad engagement for you. Oh, the Disruptor actually taking out more Zealots than SCVs there as well. Great unit in this type of scenario. This was a terrible engagement. And also the actual call wasn't great. Sure, you took out a base and a planetary that was defending the natural, but this is like being happy that you've been burrowing the lawnmower of your neighbor for the past 3 months. This feels really good. Until you realize that it's winter, so you don't need to mow the grass. And as a form of payment, your neighbor has been stealing your newspaper for the past 3 weeks. So I'm not entirely sure if this was the trade that you wanted to take. Actually, I am entirely sure that this is a trade that you didn't want to take. You're rebuilding the robotics facility. And rebuilding. You can just repower it as well. It's a little bit cheaper. God, I hope your house never loses power. Because if your house loses power, rather than just fixing the electricity, you might accidentally just buy a new house. This one is done. Smack it on the back of the house. Out of energy. Absolutely ridiculous. 6 more Banshees on the way. 2 more just idling over here. Double Forges. You have good upgrades. Your opponent has no upgrades. Invested in how many? 12 Banshees already? No more. 29 Banshees already. Couldn't spare the money for a single ship weapons upgrade. That is the Terran logic that we're so fond of. And I bet that if the Terran would have lost this, he would have complained about the weakness of the Banshee. They don't deal enough damage. Mate. Ever heard of upgrades? You might want to get them. Just might want to get them. Cannon unpowered. Observer speed is so good against this. It's absolutely a necessity. Banshees are so fast though that they outspeed observers with speed, but if you do them in combination with Phoenixes, they're usually good enough to take them out. If you really want detection that sticks, you can also get an Oracle. So you can just revelate them and then it sticks on them, right? The revelation of the Oracle. Now, once again, this move out is just, it's silly. Like, what are you trying to achieve? What, like... You're working against an army that scales terribly, like terrible scaling, okay? If you get any type of air unit, this army sucks. You want him to max out on Banshees, and you want to max out yourself as well. That is an ideal situation here for the toss. You just want to stay at home, max out 70 workers, you're all good. What you could do, send a couple of zealots across the map. Just harass, see which bases are being taken. Funny thing, a lot of people don't realize this, but if there is a planetary somewhere, and you send in zealots, and you shift click on SCVs, and it's just a planetary without any additional defense, the Zealots will kill a lot of SCVs. People don't realize this because usually planetaries don't come alone, you know? They have a little bit of baggage with them, like a couple of bio units, a ghost, 2 mines, a tank in the back. These bases don't have any of that. So despite them being planetaries, you could still harass somewhat successfully. It's not like these Zealots are contributing a whole lot into your chase of the Banshee right now. If anything, they might just be blocking your Stalkers. You're also starting to float kind of ridiculous amounts of money at this point. You're floating, well, I wish I could do math, but more than 4,500 resources or so. 2.7-ish K in minerals, and well, at this point, 2K in gas. That's a lot. That actually is a lot. You're getting a 5th base. I like your willingness to continue expanding. You just don't have enough units right now to deal with this. Finally, we see the Stargates come down. I think this is a very good call. It's a call that should have been made a long time ago. But even without these Stargates, your defense could have been a lot better had you just stayed at home a bit more and actually prepared for the possibility of an attack. This is something that I quite often notice in players that aren't complete garbage, but, you know, they're still not the absolute top, is that they kind of hope that their opponent forgets about their harassment. It's like, we're in Masters League right now. It's probably not going to happen. This guy is not going to be like, 12 Banshees, let me just idle them in the dead space. No, he's probably going to be using them. And every single time you move out, pretending like the Banshees don't exist, you're going to pay a price for that. And that is exactly what is happening in this game. You move out, you're paying a price. You move out, you're paying a price. Now, first Phoenixes are coming out. And the moment the Terran sees a Phoenix here, his immediate reaction should be to transition. Whether that's going to be into Vikings. Okay, that doesn't make any sense. Maybe Viking Banshee. Who knows? Well, not without ship weapons, I guess. But you should immediately start transitioning. Okay, Fusion Core. You know what? I don't mind this at all. It's gonna be Battlecruiser. The Battlecruiser is actually fantastic against Phoenixes. Because... you know, lots of armor on the BC. You can Yamato Phoenixes as well. Great. I love that. Great call out of the Terran here, but you still have some Banshees to deal with. You're still floating a lot of money. Despite all of your failures in this game, I wouldn't want to say you're winning, but you are winning. I know this sounds stupid because you're losing buildings left, right, and center, but you have a massive bank. You're insanely far ahead in workers still, and the only assets that your opponent has are these 20 Banshees. And these 2 Phoenixes basically make these Banshees useless. Or, well, not completely useless. I mean, they're still gonna kill some stuff because 2 Phoenix aren't fast, but eventually they will die. Look how fast it goes. Just with 2 Phoenixes. Imagine you had 4 Phoenixes. Or, even better, 5. Or you could even have gotten 6 or maybe 7 Phoenixes. You could literally just add more Phoenixes and it would be better for you. And then somewhere it starts dropping off at like maybe 9 or 10. You don't want to get more than 10 Phoenixes. Although against 20 Banshees, maybe you do want to get. See, beautiful stuff. He just threw away 20 Banshees because he knew their time was running out. Yes, he gets the Nexus, but you have freaking 6.3k in the bank, my friend. This game is completely over. You actually won at this point. Right now, the game has ended. All you need to do is realize it. Spend your money. You could... I was gonna look for the word of 10. I was gonna say triple expand, but then times 10. I don't actually know the word. Hexa is, I think... Is that 5? Octa expand, that's 8. That's where my knowledge stops. Hamster will make a witty annotation making fun of my lack of knowledge, calling me an idiot, and then he'll also put the correcting there immediately. Why can I think of that? Triple. Anyway, yeah, you're still extremely far ahead. Your opponent has no supply, no workers. You're being outmined right now because your opponent has more bases that actually are alive. You lost... Well, you're actually only mining long distance mining of a single nexus, and short distance mining on that same nexus as well with like 4 patches. So yeah, you're not getting that much stuff. I like this counterattack. I think that's a good call. Now that you have the Phoenixes out, you're safe at home. And thus this type of counterattack makes a crap ton of sense. Your opponent goes across the map. Do you have any production? 4 gateways. And you tap out without GG here. Now, I'm not saying that you were winning this game, but you definitely weren't losing it. Do you have recall available? Oh, you can't see that. Let me go back. So recall is available. You have 2 Phoenixes, 4 gateways. Where's the 4th one? Oh, maybe this is the 4th. Oh, here, down here. About to get a 5th as well. You have 1 Stargate still producing. You could recall this. Now, it doesn't look like a whole lot of Stalkers, but you have 10 Stalkers with +3. These BCs have no upgrades whatsoever. They blinked in, and they don't have Yamato either. Sure, there's more BCs on the way, but you have an infinite bank. The moment you see this, the BCs come in, you could throw down 4 Stargates, a fleet beacon, get a 5th and a 6th base, and still be floating 4k. You could continuously be warping Stalkers to stay alive until you get Tempest out. And don't forget, you're going to be completely outmining your opponent pretty darn soon. If you just had recalled here, I think if you give me the situation against a top Terran, I think I would win this. I think this is a winning position for TOS. Surely. With this much in the bank. How far are these next BCs? Okay, so 2 BCs are 30 seconds away. That's like a warp in and a half. You're definitely going to defend this if you micro well. You have 4 more Stalkers, soon to be 5 Stalkers to warp in, all with +3. You have so much money. I think it's a win. Also, you can keep the Zealots here to target down the SCVs with the trick I spoke about earlier. I think you didn't lose this game. I really don't think you lost this game. I think you won it, and you left, without realizing. You also surely did not watch the replay, or you would not have sent it to me complaining about Banshees. The funny thing is that within this replay, and within the form, you mentioned that you believe that Phoenixes are the counter, and Phoenixes are the correct counter. You figured it out already. You even saw it in this game, as the moment you built 3 Phoenixes, you managed to literally hard counter, like 26 Banshees at the same time. That is how good the Phoenix is against the Banshee, and that's why we never see this type of mass Banshee play in pro-level play. You figured it out. You don't actually believe that the Banshee is imbalanced. I don't believe the Banshee is imbalanced either. I don't even think you suck that much. I mean, you sucked at a lot of points. You made a lot of bad decisions. But I think you played probably slightly better than your opponent. And it shows in this situation as well. You have a very big bank. You just don't have any grit. You have no staying power. If you were in Rocky, we only would have had Rocky 1. And that would have been it. And it would have ended halfway. It would have been a terrible movie. No one would have watched it. This is not it. I say this is not imbalanced. And you do not suck. This is an invalid form. Boom. I don't know what else to do with it. Invalid. I don't want it. Just stay in games and win them when you deserve to win. You played okay for this level. You played about as good as your opponent. Maybe slightly better, and you were in this position. Your opponent had a bad strategy, and eventually you found the counter. I don't understand why you would send me this replay. I just don't understand this. Alright, well, I guess that's it. Is that the first one I've ever made invalid? I think so. Well, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed this confusing episode of Is it Imba or Do I Suck? When you're walking outside, be sure to be aware of any clowns on unicycles with water balloons. It is an absolute pandemic of clowns on unicycles throwing water balloons at people. So I want all of you to stay safe, stay inside, and wear your water balloon protective headgear when you're going outside. All right, that's going to be it for me today. Thanks so much for watching. And I'll see you all next time, I hope. And send me some IOTAs with the form below. You can do that and fill it in, replay in there as well. On the new maps, I like having those. Ciao, ciao.